All right, folks. So today in history, in 1889, was the birth of Sir Richard Stafford Cripps, who was widely acknowledged as ushering in a new economic era for Great Britain after the World Wars. And in a similar way, we are today discussing the work of one Jordan Peters, who ushered in an era of gains in Great Britain by popularizing the top set, back offset method. So with that introduction, before we crack on, do make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and drop a comment for the algorithm. Help promote this video out. So what I want to talk about today is I want to revisit the topic of top set, back offsets, explain what they are, some of the pros, some of the cons, and also because it's me, I want to give you some of the historical context. I remember Jordan's routines being discussed on the forums 10, 15 years ago. It's an interesting evolution of where we arrived. So I think it would help you guys understand the importance of the routine by understanding the context of where it came from. So first of all, what is it? Just a quick brief primer, although I'm sure most of you know what it is by now. Essentially, it's a way of arranging your sets and reps for an exercise where you do all your warm-ups, nice and progressive, slowly building up to one top set, which is your working set, and you normally hit that in a rep range of about 6 to 10 for the main compounds. Now, after that, you'll rest a sufficient amount of time, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and you'll do a follow-up back off set with a lighter weight in a higher rep range. So in this way, you are working 2 different rep ranges, typically speaking about 6 to 10, 10 to 15. In my opinion, that's a pretty good rep range for most people. So that's what it is. Now let's provide some historical context. Where did it come from? So I want to take you back 25 years. I started training in 99. I joined a proper gym in 2000, and that's where I was given a lot of my education around lifting, and I came from a very high intensity background. Now, at the time, the area that I'm from was absolutely obsessed with Dorian and HIIT. And I think the equivalent across the pond was dog crap. We had heard about it over here in the early 2000s. I remember discussing it, and there were a lot of similarities. Essentially, you're looking at that one top set with extras. So on any given Monday night at the gym, you would see guys working up to one top set followed by an excruciating catalog of extra reps and intensifiers. Let me just talk you through what that might look like. So you might get a guy, or you might get 3 guys on a leg press, not one guy. It takes people to do this, and that's important. So you might get 3 guys on a leg press, 1 guy doing the actual work, 2 spotters next to him. Now, when the guy in the seat fails, and that's with everyone shouting in his face, right? So really goes to failure, where he can no longer lift it up. What we might do is we might force him to just push against the chassis for a while, not lifting it up and not letting it come down. Maybe 2 or 3 seconds, really exhausting those fibers. But that's not the end. We've only just begun. That failure is the beginning of the set, really. So he'll fail, he'll do a static hold, and then what we will do is we'll push the chassis up to the top and have him lower the weight on his own accord. Do that about 3 to 5 times until he has exhausted his negative strength as well. Now, at that point, you might be done, or if your partners are feeling particularly cruel, they might strip off a couple of plates aside, and you might do the same thing again. So this was the one top set. It was an excruciating set. That's what we were taught. That's how we trained. Now, that was great. It was a fantastic way to get great stimulus from just one set. It was one set, but there were just multiple parts to that set, and it felt like it went on forever. You just felt like your head was going to explode. It was brutal, but that was real brutal training. Now, there were issues with that. The first issue is it is inherently unsafe because normally, if you fail, you still have energy left on the negative. We are approximately 30% stronger on the negative than on the positive. So on the way down than on the way up. So if you do fail, you can safely control the weight back and get out of the machine or whatever. But if you're failing on your negative, inherently that's a lot more unsafe because then you are completely at the mercy of your training partners. It's up to them to guide you to safety. You're helpless. Your strength is tapped out. So there is an inherent level of unsafety because your spotters have really got to be on the ball. And occasionally, if you ask somebody for a spot, or it's a new guy, or let's just say guy's having a bad day and he's just not really focused, you could get hurt. And I saw countless guys get hurt over the years. Saw a guy get nailed at the bottom of a hack squat, nailed at the bottom of a leg press, just because his partners weren't paying attention. So it was a particularly dangerous way to train because you are essentially helpless and reliant on your partners. Also, it was just extremely stressful. You're going to complete failure, and it's very difficult. Far more difficult than taking a set to failure. As I say, failure was the beginning of the set. Just imagine that. I think for you guys who actually work hard, and I know my audience does, you'll appreciate how difficult that set sounds. But that was the kind of training that I was brought up on. That was what we did on any given Monday night at the gym. So there were some downsides, okay? It's very tough, very mentally tough, and inherently unsafe. So over the years, there were different approaches which came about, and one of them was doing the top set followed by the back off set. And I don't know exactly where this came from. I do know that Jordan Peters popularized it. I suspect it actually came from Dante Trudell because there is an element to that in dog crap training. So the idea was, rather than you having to rely on your partners and put yourself into a potentially unsafe situation, you just do away with the majority of the intensity techniques. By all means, maybe do some force reps. I personally still like doing negatives. I think that works out fine for me personally, as long as I trust my spotter. Or drop sets, whatever. But the point was, you did a straight set, you maybe did one or two intensity techniques, but nothing as brutal as we used to do because it's unsafe. You're at the mercy of your spotters. And all we did was we followed up with one more set because more volume, as you guys know, is very powerful. Yeah, you can work harder, but if you work sufficiently hard, like to failure, maybe a few force reps, and then follow it up with more volume, you've got a great stimulus. And over time, people found that that was a really good way to train. And it had a couple of advantages. Firstly, it was inherently a little bit safer. Yes, you were trained to failure. Yes, you might have been doing force reps, maybe negatives, but it wasn't the complete destruction that we used to engage in 25 years ago. So it was inherently a little bit safer. And the second advantage, I feel, is that it allowed you to work in different rep ranges. This was valuable because up until that point, most people did fairly low rep training until you were forced to do higher reps if you were older or injured. But generally speaking, you were looking at guys working in the 6 to 10 range. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. 6 to 10 range is a good range. I think you guys will agree. For the average young guy looking to get strong, 6 to 10 is a great range. Yeah. Maybe not on everything, but you catch my drift. It's a good range. But you may be suited to high rep ranges. You may be suited to 10 to 15, 15 to 20. You may want to apply these principles to other exercises which are inherently lighter. So you want to move away from the 6 to 10 range. And what this top set, back off set allowed you to do was to work into multiple rep ranges. Let's say, for example, you were working chest across your week with 4 exercises. You may well do 6 to 10 and 10 to 15 on 2 exercises. And the other 2 exercises may well be 10 to 15 and 15 to 20 or more. So in that way, you've worked your chest across multiple rep ranges, which may well be better for growth overall, or you may find out that one of those rep ranges, which you don't normally do, you're very suited to. And I think the final advantage, probably the most important advantage, is that it makes you very focused on every set. Every set counts because each set has its own progression criteria. I have a 6 to 10 set and I have a 10 to 15 set, and I need to beat both. So you are inherently focused on progression. You're not focused on the totality of the workout. Every set slows down into its own little microcosm, and you're forced to really focus on that and try and improve, which is great for poundage progression, which is great for progressive overload, which is the engine which drives this entire system. I think one of the big advantages of this system is the fact that it forces you to focus on every set. No set is wasted, and that's crucial. So How could we possibly improve this? And I think it's a great system. I'm not saying these improvements are needed in every circumstance, but in some circumstances, like me, for example, I still use something similar to this, but with slight variations. Two main variations. The first one is I don't do my top sets in a 6 to 10 range anymore for anything at all whatsoever. I'm always in the 10 to 15 range or 15 to 20 range for my top sets because I feel more comfortable in that range, more secure, and I'm able to get a safer workout and still work hard. You can get strong and big in any rep range, right the way from 5 to, I would say, 5 to 20. I know some people would argue that and say 5 to 30, but that's my opinion. 5 to 20, I think, is reasonable. So I tend to opt to do most sets in the 15-ish range. And I also do some back offs in slightly higher rep ranges. So my first change as a guy who's a little bit older now, I'll be 43 this year, and as a guy who's reasonably strong with some injuries, I find taking that top set into the 10 to 15 range just feels way better. I'm able to progress so much better. And don't get me wrong, I still, once I've hit my 15 reps and failed, I'll still do forced reps, negatives, maybe a drop set, but that top set will be in that range and it feels, for me, great. So that might be something for you to play around with. The second thing, which might be slightly controversial for you diehards of this approach, is I add back-offs. I don't restrict myself to one back-off. Why should I? I add multiple back-offs. But here's the point. Here's where I want to remind you of the real value of this set and rep scheme. No wasted sets. That's the real point. So while I might do 3 sets, a top set, maybe one more set with that weight because it's a 15 rep max. And then I might drop the weight and do a back off. The point here is, though, every set counts. That's the key. I take the philosophy and the intent behind the top set back off set and I apply it to all my sets. I don't think there's anything special inherent in the rep scheme. It's a good rep scheme, but there's nothing inherently special about it. It forces you to focus on progression and every set counts. I think in gyms around the world, if more people focused on every single working set they did, I think there will be more muscle. That's what I believe. I see far too many people who do working sets who aren't completely committed to those working sets. They look like warm-ups. I think there would be a hell of a lot more muscle in the world if people applied the philosophy and the mindset of the top set back off to everything they did in the gym. Every set should count. So when I do multiple back offs or multiple top sets, I still feel that's within the philosophy of this system. It's not the exact system, of course, but it takes what's important about the system, which is every set counts. So in terms of what you guys can take away from this video and how to implement in your own training, I would say experiment with different ranges for your top set. Don't restrict yourself to 6 to 10. Feel free to go to 10 to 15, 15 to 20 even. Yeah. Also, if you are going to go that high, feel free to do another set with the same weight because you'll get some rep drop off, but you won't drop off all the way. Or consider doing multiple back offs. But the overriding most important thing is take the philosophy of the set and rep scheme. What's good about it is every set counts. Full focus on poundage progression, progressive overload on every single set. Make every set count. And to quote the man himself, JP, don't miss. Okay, folks, I'm going to call it there. When you're in the gym next, just imagine me next to you, shouting at you saying, every set counts, because it does.